what kind of questions are there out there?
There we are.
Hey, Brett, this is Michael from Architectural Resource. I just want to really acknowledge our homeowners. You guys did a phenomenal job of really giving us the whys and the whats and the hows and the what could haves and the what should haves. And you were very candid, and it's just so exciting to have actual end users, which was the intention when we put together this panel, is to have people talking to people about what you've run into and making this happen. And really want to acknowledge you for the effort. And you put together PowerPoints and data, and just phenomenal job. Thank you very, very much.
This is Larry Kaufman, and I just wanted to comment that when I was at DTE, we started a green energy program 15 years ago. And when we did research, we found that 40% of the people around the country all said they were environmentalists, would purchase a renewable energy program. And in reality around the country, 1.5% actually did. And I used to do and then when we started our program, we found that was about exactly accurate. About 1.5% of people actually put their money where their mouth is. And then I started a program at DT Energy Music Theater. We used to promote green energy. And we signed up thousands of people, thousands. I probably signed up 10,000 people myself from that program, one green energy program of the year. But I probably talked to 50,000 people. And the vast majority all say, yeah, I'd like renewable energy, but I'm not going to spend any money for it. And we were giving away a $30 to $40 t-shirt when they signed up, and they can sign up for as little as $2.50 a month. But very few people actually did that. We were very successful. We were the most successful, one of the most successful in the country, and it was still so low. So I give such kudos to the people actually put their money where their mouth is, because everyone says it, but so few people deny it. And again, my case study was 50,000 people that I talked to one-on-one. That's a pretty large sample. And that doesn't count the 900,000 people who walk by me, wouldn't even talk to me. So
Larry, I'm glad you chimed in. Larry's executive director at the Michigan Geothermal Energy Association. And, for when we do put our money where our mouth is, there can be repercussions. There was a lot of this in the chat actually, about those who are going geo and to some extent air source. And if we don't do it right, it could be a big problem. And part of that has to do with the backup strip heater. So let's get a little technical here, kicking in. And honestly, so many people have reached out to me and said, geo doesn't work, it costs too much. And after kind of figuring out what it ended up happening, you get back to that backup strip heater that just continues to kick on when it doesn't need to. And we were auditing a massive multifamily housing development with air source heat pumps. And you could I was clicking on the thermostat to make sure it would work for a lead audit. And I was easily accidentally switched it over to the backup air source strip heater without even knowing. And it fooled me. Like, think of just the average homeowner and tenant. And so I reached out to the team and I was like, hey, someone's going to be real pissed if you don't fix this. You're going to have an irate home. And I'm going to tell you this now in July so that you're not yelling at me later. So yeah, I didn't install it, but somehow it's just, my fault because I'm a green person. So, anyway, Larry or Scott or Al, if you're out there, Josh, you got a lot of ideas. Like, what do we do to make sure that we don't get derailed by this simple problem so that we don't keep giving a bad name to geo? I think honestly, it's besides the cost to some extent, it's a huge black eye for geothermal.
So let me address a little bit of that, but Scott, correct me if my data is old, because
sure.
When you can install a geo without any backup, without any resistance heat. However, you need a larger system. So, and geo has been installed north of the Arctic Circle. So to say it doesn't work in Michigan is silly, because the last time I looked at a map, Michigan was south of the Arctic Circle. So that's not an issue. But you need a bigger geo. So the question is, what's the balance between the size of the geo and the size of the resistance? And when I looked at it, We usually put the balance point at about 7 degrees because there's only 230 hours below 7 degrees in Michigan. Obviously, depending where you are in Michigan. I'm talking Southeast Michigan. And there was a 50 to 60 year payback to do it without the backup. So in my house, I actually set the balance point at, I should have had a 6-ton unit, but I put in a 4-ton unit, which was a lot cheaper and had a balance point of 20. And then over the years, I did more efficiency and more insulation. And now my balance point's down to about the 7. But that's a decision a homeowner has to make. Do you want to spend the money up front for a larger system, or do you want to have a slightly higher utility bill with the backup and have a lower bill up front? But that's part of the decision making, and every homeowner has to make that decision for themselves. Scott, I'm sure I said something incorrect, so correct me.
No, actually, I think you're right on the money, Larry. One of the most often phrases that I use during home shows to home owners is, the cheapest geothermal to install is most likely going to be the most expensive to own. Geothermal needs to be designed, and when properly designed, which includes the loop. I mean, I work for a manufacturer and I'd love to tout our products, but quite frankly, if you don't get a proper loop put in, it's going to be a very expensive paperweight. It is all about design. And so, but like you said, Larry, you have to balance trying to, auxiliary heat is not a bad thing. It's cheaper than you would think if your balance point is correct. And balance point just means at what point does your auxiliary heat kick in. In Michigan, I don't disagree with 7 degrees, Larry. If you want to really be aggressive, go to 0 degrees. But when auxiliary heat kicks on with geothermal, it's helping it. It's not doing all the work. And then I seen in the comments earlier, if you are using a programmable stat with geothermal, don't. If your set point is more than 2 degrees than your current temperature, then your auxiliary heat's going to kick in because it thinks that the unit is not keeping up. There's a terminology in geothermal that says set it and forget it. And that's what they're referring to. And it really is something very common with geothermal homeowners. So be happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, Scott, I'm glad you said that. I think that set it and forget it applies to many different situations. I think in many cases, the thermostat savior isn't real, and it never really was, and it's not a simple solution we can use. But Amy, Mike, you guys got a mini split back there, but I know when it gets real cold, what are you doing for backup?
Yeah, so again, we had a pretty brutal winter. I think everyone would agree, and this is a great pressure test for the house because we completed construction in December, moved in January, and here we are living in it. Understanding that the thermostat doesn't necessarily reflect what this thing's kicking out, and just understanding things like that for us was part of the first piece of the puzzle. But we are thankful that we had an actual a backup heat source in the basement in the form of it's a gas-powered fireplace insert, and for us that was actually the way that we kept the basement warm. Now, one part of the design in the house that our architect we're really grateful and thankful for is that it's an open stairwell. So, so it's open, there's no risers on the stairs, it's just stair treads. So, heat rises. So it sort of ambiently allowed that heat to rise. And of course, the serv is circulating it out all over the house anyway. So we really were quite comfortable. I mean, in the basement, I would set that thermostat for the basement mini split unit. I would set it at 70. Thinking the old thermostat thinking, 70, cut off at 70. That's what I want it to be. And the thing was just struggling. And I'm like, oh, that's right. It's because it's really cold outside. It can't keep up. And the colder it gets, the more it has to work. So that was just a good lesson for us to learn. And so we'll turn on the fireplace and let it go, for a couple hours, and it heats it up when we're okay. But then the other practical aspect is the fact that, you don't have to go downstairs where it's cold. It can be cold. It's okay if it's cold downstairs, and that's part of, I think, again, the Dutch versus American thing. I think that's something else. I think that as me, Mike Baker, I'm conditioned to being comfortable all the time, every time. By God, I pay my taxes. I should be whatever. So, you know, I deserve to be comfortable all the time. And I think, like, you know, I think it's just behavior. It's about being a human being and just learning to adapt to a new reality. And for us, it's actually been wonderful because, you know, we've had these things off for the last 3-4 weeks. They've just been, the weather has been pretty darn decent. And the panels have been generating like tremendous amount of power. I can't see the inverter right now, but you know, the things have been, you know, it's really been doing well. So we're actually really encouraged about it. You know, I mean, a lot of the frustration we're experiencing right now has nothing to do with the house's green or its sustainability. It has to do with little things, dings on cabinets, a light that doesn't work. It's basic stuff like that. So really, from the sustainability aspect of what the house has done so far, you know, we haven't gone through a whole year of the house yet, but so far we're really feeling good about it.
Yeah, we are.
Looks like Julie Roth has a question. Can you?
I
Go ahead,
do.
Julie.
Yeah, thank you for that. I actually have two. They're kind of specific. One is you were talking about geothermal and, you know, sizing the system. If you size it larger, it ends up costing less over the long run. Is that also true with air source heat pumps? Is it a true statement in regards to air source as well? And then my other question was for someone, I think it might have been Brett, I can't remember, talking about time of use and solar and batteries. And my question is, if you have, you know, DTE or now consumers with inflow outflow plus solar, is time of use better regardless of whether you have a battery, or does the battery change that calculation? Those are my two questions.
Well, Dale, I don't know if you can chime in on the air source side. If you have any thoughts there on the.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think the short answer is yes. The air source would be a similar situation that if you had sized it a little bigger, you'd be a little safer on a cold day. My personal experience with that is that the contractor that I used wanted to sell me a 10 kilowatt strip heater in the new air handler, which was a 50 amp breaker in the panel. And I didn't want to do that. So I did a bunch of math, and basically I proved to myself that 3-ton unit was going to have enough capacity to heat my house on I think I did down to 0 degrees, and I did a 20-mile-an-hour wind, that it was going to have enough capacity. Now I haven't actually gone through that condition because it's only been active since the 1st of March to prove that I did my math right. But I think sometimes the contractor wants to install the backup heater worse than you do, because it's a liability for them if it doesn't keep up. And I literally had a sign that I was okay not having the electric heat on it, that I was going to take that risk. And I'm comfortable taking that risk because I did the math myself, and I usually do my math right. But so that's my comment on that, is that yes,
Dale?
the principle is probably the same. But I think in a lot of cases you can get by fine without that electric backup.
Dale, the standard in Michigan, by the way, is you should be able to design a house to maintain 70 degrees at -10 outside. That's what you probably should go to, because there are days we get below 0, not every year, but most years. And
Yeah.
you want to be, or whatever you're comfortable. The standard in Michigan is 70, -10. The one other advantage of a backup is if you have a loop problem or a compressor problem, you could turn the backup on by itself and probably maintain 50, 55 degrees in your house. And this prevents the pipes from freezing if there was a problem with the other thing. It's just a little side benefit of having the backup resistance heat.
Can I ask you both a follow-up question before the solar? I don't want to dominate here, but I've been hearing a lot about dual fuel systems, like folks that have a relatively new high efficiency gas furnace and that are looking at this as like a massive stranded asset they already invested in and now want to go green. How beneficial is it for those folks to maybe invest in a dual fuel that wraps around or coordinates with their current furnace? And is that even worth doing?
Julie, this is Scott. I'm with Intertek. Full disclosure, we manufacture geothermal. And I guess what I would say there is actually there are many times we recommend dual fuel It really depends on your situation, and you just hit one of them. One of them is if you have a good furnace already there, what benefit that could give you, especially if you either have backup generator and or solar, is if you have storage, if there is a power outage, you can start a gas furnace much easier than the compressor of a geothermal or air source heat pump. So that would be one instance. Or if you live in an area that's known to lose power very often, you get up into the UP or something like that, the further north you go and the more power outages they experience, the more that dual fuel might make some sense. And then on the other side of that, if you have solar, one of the things I've been helping a lot of people with recently is just recommending soft starts on either air source and or geothermal equipment, because it really brings your draw down to where your solar can handle it a lot better. That's not all the answer, but I hope that helps a little bit. It's certainly not a bad idea.
I wanted to and just say a shout out to Shawn Wright, who is down in the Kalamazoo area installing tons of awesome dual fuel systems where it is necessary in some cases to help make that shift. It can be costly to go all electric in some circumstances. There can be a lot of concern there. And also the Consumers Energy Program is for low income offering dual fuel heat pump systems, cold weather climate air source, or maybe some extent geothermal, all throughout a large chunk of their territory where there is propane to help make that transition and shift costs. So yeah, I really appreciate that. And so if you're looking for that kind of help out there, I wanted to go back to the time of use question. There was a great comment in there from another Dale, but is there anybody here who's using time of use programs either with solar or batteries? Josh, why don't you chime in on what your experience is?
So not with battery, we don't have battery yet, but with solar, it is advantageous. It's not huge. One of the big benefits though is to remember that if we generate solar during, let's say before the 2 p.m, their new time, we're credited at that lower rate, but we're also credited at the higher rate during the afternoon when we're generating power. So it's good to keep that straight. I've run some data, a couple others on the Facebook group have run numbers. It is advantageous. It's not hugely advantageous to do it, but for us, we were able to take advantage of the Consumers Energy EV program where they want to gather data from EV owners on when and how much they're charging. By providing them view of my data, I got a better time of use rate, and it was allowed, for a net metering customer, among other credits they gave me for sharing data as well. So from my experience, again, not with batteries, it was advantageous.
We have 2 other questions, Brett. Pick which one.
Yeah, Lauren, why don't you welcome? Thanks for joining us. Why don't you chime in?
Yeah, I'm right up against all of this right now in my house in Ann Arbor, so it's DTE territory. And we already have rooftop solar. We've already got, the house is insulated and sealed by Ecotelligent. It's Pearl certification level. And we really wanted to do Geo. In fact, when we designed the solar, that was the plan, but we cannot do it because of various lot constraints that are not at all unique to our house. They're actually ubiquitous. We can't get, the only drilling that I can find in the whole state is on a flatbed truck, which cannot get between houses to get the drilling equipment back there. And there is a small scale drilling setup called Terra Nova, which they're using in New York State, and Project Dandelion is doing that and so forth. Is anything like that coming soon? Because we've got a 30-year-old HVAC system that's got to go and got to be moved. So, and it's a real chicken and egg problem for us, because we're going to move where it's located in the basement and do some redesign. It's kind of a whole big mishmash. And which comes first? What can we wait for? What can't we? And how much is it going to cost? We are early adopters. We are going above and beyond, but we also can't completely drain the piggy bank and be working until we're 80. So
I have a possible solution for you. There's a company called Well Connect in Alpena, Michigan, that makes a portable geothermal
ooh,
that you may want to talk to. Dennis Schultz is the owner there, or Andy Schultz and others. But if you look up, the company is Well Connect. The parent company is called, I think, Terra Caloric. But in Alpena, if you look them up, I'm sure you can find them. Talk to Dennis or Annie and see. That's just it's a portable geothermal system, so you may want to look at it. I don't know if it will work or not, but it's certainly worth investigating.
great.
And I
Thank
know
you.
Dandelion isn't in Michigan right now, but they have smaller drilling options. But they're so overwhelmed with business that I don't know when and if they're coming to Michigan. We're actually trying to get them to our conference to speak on
Oh
that.
gosh,
But
that would be so great. Well, apparently like one of these small scale drilling outfits is made in Ohio. And I'm like, can you stop by Michigan on the way to New York?
I assume you've tried the local Ann Arbor dealers, Michigan Energy Services, or in Dexter, Haley, or
Yeah. A million
Sorry.
times. So I'm just hoping, but you gave me something new to look for. So that's great. Thank
Lauren,
you.
the other thing you may want to look at that's becoming popular, but I will say it's on the higher end cost wise, is the air to water technology. So basically it would operate radiant heat and domestic hot water, but it does it with an air source unit on the outside of your home as opposed to a loop. And it's made just for that reason when you can't get a loop in your area. So that is technology that exists. And you can feel free to reach out to me if you want more information.
But that would be basically putting in radiant heat in the.
It would. It can also be used with just the hydronic air handler. It's what we have, full disclosure again. Not trying to hard sell you, just making sure that it's you ask for different options, and that's one of them.
Because my thing is like, I want to do something that like we're trying to use drawdown and kind of, but also something that isn't so crazy expensive and so off the wall that nobody else would ever do it. So that's.
Well, Lauren, thanks for chiming in, and hopefully when you solve this, we'll have you out to explain how you did it, because I know you'll have all the information. So, Janet, what was your question?
Unmute, Janet. Unmute.
Okay, sorry, I forgot. I have a question for Scott, but first I just have a comment for Lauren. Is there a possibility of putting your loop underneath the driveway that might be easier to get to drill? But
and no, and the reason is because of zoning and lot lines and buried utilities. I mean, every problem you can imagine, we seem to have. So
okay, because I was just thinking that if I get a geothermal someday, we were thinking of doing it under the driveway, but we really haven't looked into it yet.
Actually, my coworker, the person who taught me geothermal, Jerry Getz, bought a condo and had it put under his driveway before the condos were built. And then they put the driveway over. So I know it can be done because he had it done in a condo. So when people say, I have a condo, I can't put geo in, he actually did. So that is a possibility.
Our problem is the utility easement that's in our front yard. So.
I understand that, Lauren. I just was talking to Janet that if that is a possibility in the future, I know it has been done. But go on with your question. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, great. Okay, my question for Scott. Scott, you mentioned a soft start on a geothermal system for either an air or ground source type geothermal. And is a soft start, so that your solar can get it started if you were like using your batteries or something on an outage. But is soft start something that's available on most all geothermal systems, or do you have to get that especially, or is it a matter of how you set the settings or what?
Yeah, it's actually something that's available either aftermarket or even a lot of manufacturers. I know we factory install our soft starts as an option. I believe Water Furnace does too. So, and all it does is it just makes that startup. For instance, if a 3-ton unit would have I guess a locked rotor amps of about 100 amps, then it would bring that down to even somewhere around 30. So, I mean, it's a significant drop and allows that solar to work for you. You know, allows it to keep that load off, and then in critical loads, that of course makes a huge difference.
So it's something we have to ask for in the design of the thing to make sure we get it.
Yes, it's just a component. It's not very expensive. It might be a couple $100 ad, and it's great even in older homes where you might have lights dim when air conditioning kicks on. It helps in those circumstances as well.
I wanted to, we've got Marcus on De La Fleur, and I know you've done a lot on thinking through your deep energy retrofit, and we talked a lot about in the questions HVAC and solar. But can you tell us a little bit about, some weatherization challenges in older homes?
Yeah, thank you, Brett. The one thing I wanted to point out that we had sort of a really interesting discussion, almost sort of nerdy-like, about heat pumps and ground source heat pumps and HVAC systems, all those things. What may be worthwhile to point out to those who are sort of not in the nerd club is that it really starts with the building envelope before you even think about what kind of HVAC system you use. And you can really get the biggest bang for the buck by improving your building envelope. We're talking about insulation, we're talking about air sealing, all that other stuff. If you get all that stuff right and get it right up front, then you end actually up having an HVAC system that is half the size or a third of the size or a quarter of the size of what it would have been otherwise. So it's always a good idea to have it start with the envelope first, and then that's where you invest your money, and then you save your money on a significantly smaller HVAC system. So for those who are just plain homeowners out there, I would encourage you to start on the building envelope and let that drive the size and the type of HVAC system you're going to use. That's all.
Totally agree.
Well, great. We are at our time here. We went a little bit over today, but again, I want to thank everyone for sticking around, asking some great questions. Huge thanks to our planning partners, our sponsors, and our speakers, Amy and Mike, Josh, Bart, Dale. I really appreciate you coming in and sharing your story and your time with us. I'm going to stick around here. I'm going to mute, but I'm going to post some of their contact information for you all. And it's also going to get sent back out through the Eventbrite email. So you do have that. And then there is a recording. This will be hosted up on our YouTube channel if you want to take a look at it. And on June 30th, we're going to be having the same conversation again, but from a new construction standpoint, which I know right now has tremendous barriers to it beyond just the energy side. So we're going to have that discussion. But thanks to you all for joining us. We're going to get going here. I'm going to post some of that information and the survey link in the chat if you can take that. Especially if you're in Michigan or Minnesota or New York right now, I really hope you can be safe out there. Be well. We know that building science can help us solve our problems. We can use it to be safer beyond just COVID-19. So wear your mask, get vaccinated if you can. Talk about ventilation, talk about filtration, humidification. It's going to be better for us once we get through this anyway, but we can use it right now to be safer and to help stave off this next wave. So thank you all. Take care, be safe, be well.